Welcome to the Tank Podcast. In this episode, Patrick Galbraith reads from his book In Search of One Last Song, Britain's Disappearing Birds and the People Trying to Save Them, a thoughtful account of the complex relationship between the people and birds that share these islands we call the UK.
With blistered heels and bones that ache, marching through pitchy ways and blind, the miry track is hard to make. Yet ever hovering in my mind, above red crags, a kittiwake hangs motionless against the wind. Wilfred Wilson Gibson, The Kittiwake, from Battle, written in 1915. A boy at war thinks of home. "88 years later, the activist Peter Tatchell would write that Captain Fitzgerald and Lord Kitchener died in each other's arms. Of the 12 sailors who survived when HMS Hampshire went down off Marwick Head in 1916, nobody saw anything. But I like to think it's true, and that the man on the posters drowned in love. For days afterwards, bloated bodies in cold wet uniforms swept in along Orkney's western shore. Fitzgerald's corpse was sent south to be buried in Surrey, but Kitchener's was one of the 625 never to be found. 285 feet beneath me, the bright blue sea breaks white against the cliffs. The rock is hard and cold on my knees, but I can't bring myself to stand so close to the edge. I look round, up the path, back the way I came. The same sandy-coloured rabbit is still standing on its haunches, ears up, watching me. When I turn my head to listen, I can just hear them, the squawk of kittiwake chicks rising over the roar of the water, crying out to be fed. The cliffs would have sounded different when Kitchener's men were dying. In 1891, when a vertebrate fauna of the Orkney Islands was compiled, the authors wrote that it would be a waste of time to go into much detail on kittiwakes, as they bred prolifically wherever there was any suitable habitat. A mile out, where the sea turns from blue to grey, a fishing boat bobs, and on deck a figure leans over the side as though he is dropping a creel. At Marwick Head, the kittiwake population is now less than 10% of what it once was, while up in Shetland and out west on St Kilda, cliffs that wailed with the little white gulls have fallen silent. There are still well over 300,000 pairs that breed around the British coast every summer, but the rate at which we're losing them, largely as a result of the disappearance of the sand eels they feed on, confirms that the seas are changing. I checked the time. It is 8:43, 2 minutes before the mine was hit and the lights went out. With a hole torn through its hull, it took HMS Hampshire just 15 minutes to sink beneath the waves. Ingrid Jolly, small pale hand holding her walking stick aloft, stands halfway up the garden, smiling in the sun. "You're very welcome. Everybody is very welcome, but just say it in your head." She pauses and glances behind her as the door of the house opens, then turns back and repeats it slowly. "In Orkney. It's in Orkney, not on Orkney. Never on Orkney. Just do it in your head. Just say it until it sounds right." Her hair is silver and thick, her old eyes bright blue, and as I lean back on the bench beneath the beech tree, looking out over Kirkwall while mouthing the words, she starts laughing like a child. "You see? You hear it? You're in Orkney. We would never say on Orkney. Everybody is very welcome here, unless they maybe think they're going to come and change the world." An old t-shirt with a faded picture of a crab across it tucked into beige trousers that swing a couple of inches above the ankle, Billy Jolly appears at the door. He stands for a moment, blinking in the light like a salty mole, then stumbles down the stone steps, holding his Zimmer out in front of him as though he's driving a trap down a steep slope and the pony's about to bolt. Ingrid points her finger at my chest and shouts over to him, "Patrick! He's come from Dumfries to ask you about the sand eels and the kittiwakes and the fishing." She says it as though it's one of the funnier things she's ever heard. Shuffling his feet and shaking his head, Billy comes slowly across the grass. When he gets to where I'm standing, he looks up at me, peering for a second or so into my face, then hunches over on the Zimmer. The sand eels and the kittiwakes and the fishing. Twice he slowly repeats Ingrid's words as if he's asking himself a question, then grunts thoughtfully as though he's found the right answer. The thing is, they become too good at it, the fishermen. Shot themselves in the foot. It was a good situation until they realised they could get a purse net over and catch 100 times as many as what they could with all the fishing from small boats. So that they killed the whole thing completely. Billy stops, looks up, and gestures down towards the sea, then clasps his hands back on the grey handles. That was the industrial fishing. We used to get a lot of the Danish boats. They would only keep the very best. All the rest, tons of sand eels among it, down into the hold for fish meal. Bloody terrible, some of the fish that went down. Absolutely crazy. Then dried off, then in a powder, then fed to swine. When storms rolled in, and Billy was a younger man, he would head down to Kirkwall Harbour to wait for the Danish boats to appear. Anything they had which hadn't yet gone into the hold he would buy cheap and send down to market in Aberdeen. I've seen maybe 3 of my boys and myself down there, he tells me. It was always hellish weather, sleet and wind and cold and wet, and we'd be doing deals with them. He looks up brightly, smiling with crooked teeth. Soaking wet. We'd be soaking wet, absolutely soaking. We weren't caring because there was money involved, you see. Billy suggests going to his garage, and I walk slowly behind him, small steps down the garden path. Where the ground drops away at the end of the lawn, he stops and his Zimmer falls out from beneath him, knocking over a watering can. He grabs at the wall and turns slowly to face me. I'm sorry, it's just the only way, he says, looking at his feet. It's easier sometimes to go backwards than it is to go forwards. Down the short flight of stairs, Billy steps, 1 foot trailing after the other. From among the raised beds, Ingrid shouts down that the dishwasher isn't working either. Sometimes I think washing dishes by hand can be just as good, I reply, and she holds her hand to her forehead, laughing. No, I'm the dishwasher, she calls back. Billy, standing on the bottom step, shakes his head and smiles. At one end of the garage, a great mound of wood is piled up almost to the ceiling, and at the other, in front of us, small stools and tables are stacked up neatly, one on top of the other. Billy counts them for a moment, under his breath, then tells me apologetically that he's in pretty short supply. I spend a lot of my time in here if the weather's not great, getting the stools made, but it takes me a long while to do jobs that I used to be able to do just in no time at all. He pushes his Zimmer across to his workbench and perches on the edge. When Billy was 14 years old, his father sent him to Lossiemouth to learn to fillet fish. Up until that point, he remembers thinking that his dad, who worked as a butcher before becoming a fishmonger, knew what he was doing. But he soon realised he had little idea at all. He used a knife, as a butcher, you see. But to be quite honest, he didn't realise what a rubbish filleter he was until I came back and showed him what he was doing wrong. When I tell Billy I once went to Billingsgate Fish Market, he groans in wonder and nods. I've never been. Oh, I would have loved to have been. See, I always wanted to go down, but I just never got around to organising it because I was quite good at filleting, and they had what they called the Young Tradesman of the Year or something, and it was competitions. He pauses mid-story, reaches for his Zimmer, and drags his feet over to the stools. When he gets to them, he stops and turns to look at me. After a moment, he lifts a small, varnished one down off the top and places it on the dusty concrete. With his dry, red hand, he pats the top of it twice, then goes back to the workbench. Boys would be coming from all over Britain, and I was desperate to go down. I could fillet cod, ling, tusk, I could truss a chicken, I could do all the things. I could see the list every year. He holds his finger out in front of him and runs it down an imagined sheet of paper. I could see the list, and I would think I can do all that, no bother at all. But I just never got round to it. Oh, it would be a really interesting thing. Somewhere, up above us, a great metallic roar burns across the sky. Billy puts his hands to his ears as the jet grows louder and louder, thundering to a crescendo over our heads before fading out across the sea, leaving the quiet afternoon and the starling's song. But with your sand eels, Billy begins, putting his hands back on the Zimmer, I wonder if it's also something to do with temperature. They just got less and less and less, you know. He starts telling me about an island he used to go to, then stops and closes his eyes. That's terrible. Oh, sake, I've forgotten the name of it. He tries a few different names, but shakes his head after each of them, then starts laughing and points at his forehead. When you get old, this up here doesn't work the same as when you're younger. A couple of moments later, it comes to him and he says it 3 times. Bury. There was Bury and there was Greenholme. I would go there ringing the kittiwakes and the turns. I had a small boat. Whenever Billy set off, the boys in the shop would ask if he was away to wring their necks, but he tells me he enjoyed it, and he went regularly, until the birds got less and less. He leans heavily on the Zimmer with his left hand and holds his right hand out in front of him. The sand eel were a very valuable source of nutrition, he says as he rubs his fingers together. Soft and oily, very good fish for a small bird. Billy can't recall just when it was, but he remembers that sometimes small fish with a hard, scaly surface, very like the sand eel in shape, would appear. These cursed things choked the young birds, you see, completely killed them. And of course the adult kittiwakes didn't realise this, and they were stuffing these things into them, thinking they were feeding them with sand eels, but they were killing them. The stool is child-sized, and Billy sits above me, looking down solemnly. That's terrible, forgetting the name of that island, he says. That really was a part of my life. For all that his father was hopeless at filleting fish, Billy tells me he was always a far superior musician. He was a very good singer, a tenor singer. He played the piano, he could sight read, played the bagpipes, he played in the Kirkwall City Pipe Band. Billy stops to draw breath, then continues. He played in a dance band, he could harmonise just perfectly, he played the saxophone. Yes, he played the saxophone very well, and he was what they called the crooner. He looks down at me, seemingly wondering if I know what a crooner is, before miming a snippet of song. All I do, he shrugs, is play the mouth organ, and I sing a bit. Back in the 1970s and 80s, Billy and Ingrid regularly performed pieces by Ingrid's cousin, Ali Winnick, a poet and songwriter who worked as a stereotype operator on the Orcadian. Dead a long while ago now, Billy tells me. But they were all songs about things that happened in Kirkwall, situations that there were. He was very clever. There were things like butter on the bow and the PD Pakistani. Billy chews at his lip in thought, then says, that sounds very racist, but it's exactly not. If you think of the old days that tinkers used to come around, you know, selling stuff, I mind them fine coming to Kirkwall, and especially out to the farms. They'd just open their bags and there'd be anything at all, and so eventually they dried up, but the Pakistanis suddenly appeared. Using his Zimmer frame, Billy pushes himself further back onto the workbench. Eventually the Pakistanis went as well, but they were very nice guys, the tinkers, and I still know some tinkers here, but they are just settled now, you see. 2 or 3 years ago, he can't remember how long exactly, Billy was driving in from the other end of the island when he ran into one of them walking along the road. I pulled over, and I said to him, do you want to run into the town? He said, aye, that'll be fine. He got in and we started yarning, and he said, I've just learned to read. Billy shakes his head. He's retired, this man. He cleaned dishes all his life in the Kirkwall Hotel. He was a very good worker. I said to the guy, you've just learned how to read? He says, aye. Then he says to me, I'm reading books. And he says he never realised what a fantastic situation it was. Billy sucks the air between his teeth and stares down at me. He never got around to learning, and now he can, and he's got this great gift, this fantastic situation. We sit in silence for a while, and Billy closes his eyes, murmuring under his breath. I'm about to suggest I should go, when he says there's a poem Ali wrote, describing himself. He's a terribly modest man. He describes writing, the work of writing being similar to a farmer building a byre. Midaidos, it was called. If I get the start of it, I'll get there no bother at all. Billy looks up at the corrugated roof and holds his hand to his mouth and eventually tells me he's got it. He shuffles off the bench, stands tall, holds himself up on his Zimmer, and begins. My music's like the dairy byre the farmer built to hide his kye, with concrete block and 4x2 and many a pound of nails forbye. He bigot early, laboured late, times doon below, whiles up a bun, and grudged a minute after mate, so gret his urge to hae it done. At last the snack was on the door, and milkers in, each to a star, when neighbours clapped his back and said, "Feth boy, but she's no bad at all." Alas, there came an unken man, who hummed and hayed and spoke a heap when town and country planning brook and measured wi' a muckle tape. "No, no, this building will not do. One needs a permit now, you know. The door's not tight, the floor's not right, and look, you've built it far too low." Boy, wormy didos, we know, me and my song, him and his buyer, we both began without a plan, and feth we should have bigot higher. Billy stacks my stool back with the others, and I follow him out of the garage into the early evening sun. At the bottom of the steps he stops and opens the door to the greenhouse. Just beyond the door there is an old enamel basin held up by bricks. He bends down, puts his hand to the water, and 3 fish rise to the surface. "I was busy working in the greenhouse one day," he tells me, "and I thought what a boring thing this tank is, so I went straight out and I bought myself 4 fish." With his finger he traces the largest of them as it swims round and round. "Did you ever know a butcher called Porky Horn who wrote poetry?" I ask. Billy looks up. "Yes, David Horn. He had a shop in Kirkwall. He wrote a lot of poems, one about the bar." I used to have it in my head, but it's gone now, completely. Billy turns back to the fish, but they've disappeared down into the grey water. The 4th one died not long ago, and Billy buried the body beneath the tomato plants.
To hear more podcasts from Tank, you can subscribe on all major podcast platforms or follow us on SoundCloud. The theme music for this podcast is by Himera.